Draw your last pathetic card so I can end this, Yugi.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba. But it does contain the unstoppable
Thornado.
Impossible!
I've assembled all 5 special cards, all 5 pieces of the puzzle.
Yo guys, what's up? This is the Thornado build, the build that's been giving Protoss players all over the world nightmares. This build is really strong, and it's pretty easy to execute actually. It does take a little bit of practice, but knowing you guys will get the hang of this one immediately. It's actually one of the most fun builds, and you can beat players of just about any caliber with this. I've beaten many good players with this build. Even this player that we're playing against right now is about 5,300 MMR, which is pretty good. So basically what the Thornado build is, it's a build where you drop a Thor, you take a big metaphorical Thor dump in your opponent's main base, and you clean up with Cyclones and Marines. It really does do well because Protoss needs a lot of units to deal with the Thor in the main base, and then while that's happening, you attack the natural, and usually you can do a lot of damage. Now, this build doesn't come without risk. There's always the potential. Anytime you proxy in this matchup, there's a chance that your opponent might have also proxied you, and it's very difficult to hold. So you got to be very aware of that. And if you think your opponent might be proxying you, you're definitely going to need a wall at the top of your ramp and a bunker.
Your forces are under attack.
But let's get back to the basics of this build. This build, like a lot of Terran versus Terran builds, you're going to want to start off with a 16 gas and 16 barracks, and then follow up with a 17 gas as well, and then make a Reaper. You're going to need the gas as soon as possible, because without it, you won't be able to afford all the stuff you need. You're going to need a starport, a factory, an armory, and then, of course, the Thor and medevac. And that's just a lot of gas to get off of one base this early into the game. The Reaper is going to be very helpful here in determining exactly what kind of angle of attack you want to take, because if your opponent is going for something like a mass Blink Stalker attack, it actually becomes very dangerous to drop the Thor into the main without losing it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to send a Reaper across the map. So you can see we have the factory proxied. You don't necessarily need to put the factory super close to your opponent's base, because with the medevac boost, anywhere that's halfway or half, or across the halfway point of the map is pretty good. And in a spot like this, it's a lot harder for your opponent to scout. As you can see, very calculated. I let the probe slip into my main base here. Yeah, that was an accident, guys. Okay, you definitely don't want the probe to come in and scout the armory. That's going to give you a lot of trouble. As you can see here, just trying to do whatever we can, distract him with the Reaper, try to force a little bit more multitasking out of our opponent. At this point, I messed up a little bit here, so I'm pretty sure the Reaper's going to die, as it does, but that's alright. Now we can use our actions a little bit more efficiently, as my Reaper control was not the greatest there. Even these supply depots behind the main base, they're kind of important. If somehow stalkers get into your main base, that serves as a wall to block them, and you could get an SCV surround. Getting an SCV surround on stalkers will totally wreck them, especially if they're in a low number count. So as you can see, the Thor and the medevac are on the way. There's a lot of different variations you could do with this build. Thornado, the original one, you get the Cyclone. In a second here, you'll be able to afford the Cyclone upgrade, which you can start. I think I'm going to start it here pretty soon. There we go. But you can also follow the Thor up with tanks. I think the tank follow-up is actually even stronger than the Cyclone follow-up as far as sieging the natural. The Cyclone one requires a lot more micro, so if you're not really comfortable with the amount of micro that this build requires, you can always go with the siege tanks instead, and then just siege up the natural, and it's very difficult for the Protoss player to break that. Now, as you can see, we're sending our Marines across the map. We're going to pull some SCVs in case the Thor gets damaged. We have SCVs on the way to repair him. Repair that bad boy, and here we go, taking our medevac butt cheeks and taking a huge Thor dump in our opponent's main, as we said earlier. The fact of the matter is that the Thor does one-shot workers, so if it's unattended, it'll kill workers very, very quickly. They even 3-shot stalkers, which is really good. So as you can see here, we're rejoining our Thor with our army. And this is a very, very strong push for our opponent to deal with at this point. He only has about 4 stalkers, maybe 5. And we're sieging up that pylon. Shield battery is in place. But with the Thor's damage output, actually the shield battery is not enough here. Even if he overcharges that, it's going to be a really, really tough hold for him because the Thor just has so much health and armor. As you can see here, he's really trying to break down that ramp. He even has an immortal. So we got to make sure that we don't lose our units. The reason you have the medevac exists solely to protect and save those really, really expensive units like the Thor and the Cyclone. And the Marines serve as a tank for those. So basically everything's all about protecting your gas units. You really want to keep those safe. You want to retain as many units as possible. That's what this build is all about, is unit retention. As you can see here, we even bring a Liberator in. Because, you know, you can either build Liberators or Vikings. You want to use that starport to build extra stuff that can put out damage. And sometimes you could go Banshees as well. I've actually done that variation as well. The Banshees are really strong. I'd recommend going the Banshees if your opponent is trying to defend using Zealots or Adepts. As you can see here, just killing that probe right there. And our opponent is now contained into their main base. This is a situation I found myself in a few times with this build, actually. It is very hard to break a ramp because the Thor is so big and slow that it kind of blocks everything from moving up the ramp. This is where the siege tanks would actually come in handy. I should have made siege tanks a little bit quicker here. But breaking the ramp is a lot easier with siege tanks than with a Thor and Cyclones. That's why I would say that the Cyclone variant is just a little bit harder to execute. But the build is called Thornado, so of course we had to do the variant with Cyclones. Regardless, these Thor pushes are really, really strong against Protoss early. Gonna pick off that pylon, try to kill and pick off whatever we can. I even spot this War Prism. We do save that one Cyclone. He lifts up. He actually had an opportunity to maybe kill that Cyclone, but he didn't really want to risk losing the War Prism and that Immortal. And you can't really blame him for that. As you can see, he's just stuck in his main base, and at this point, it's going to be really hard for him to do anything. I lose that medevac. It's a little sloppy, but mistakes do happen. As you can see, we're taking an expansion as well, because at this point I'm kind of like, well, I'm not 100% sure I can end the game here, so maybe I gotta start transitioning out. He even picks up this tank with the War Prism Immortal Micro. Very good by him. Really well placed. Trying to make a bad situation into a good one. Pick off the Immortal and that War Prism though, but this blink is really, really good out of him. It was really at my most vulnerable point during this entire push. So at this point I'm like, he's just gonna kill this tank, so I might as well try to pick off as much as I can with it. And I really do try to, and I do pick off some. I almost get 3 stalkers, only 2 though. And now his stalkers are not in his main base, so I see this as an opportunity to actually push into there. Sieging up, picking off probes with the Liberator. This is really bad. We're even going to pick off this Robo right here. At this point, I'm pretty sure the game's over, and we just want to make sure that we don't throw somehow. We even get that Immortal as it pops out of the Robo. He's only got 3 stalkers, and he's not mining. We've got our second base completed now. And as you can see, that Thor did a ton of damage, and keeping it alive, you can get so much value out of that thing. It's almost like a battle cruiser. You just constantly micro that Thor, make sure you never lose it, and the damage output is super, super high. One-shots probes, like we said before, and just does a ton of damage to Stalkers and every other Protoss unit. It's pretty decent against Immortals as well, as long as you don't ever lose it. And at this point, the game's completely over. He's going to try to do one last push, because I feel like that's something you should always do. Some people, they quit games a little bit too early, but you should always try to just give it one last try. You know, put everything you have into like one last attack or something like that. You'd be surprised how many times you'll end up winning the game, actually. I've won a lot of games from very, very behind positions simply because I didn't give up. So just don't give up, guys. Show everybody that Terran heart. And as you can see here, this Protoss player, you know, he just didn't have what it took to hold off this Thornado attack. Now we're transitioning into bio, and I was like, you know, the best way to end this Thornado build would probably be by dropping more Thors in his main base. I'm just making more and more Thors and medevacs. I've got 2 already with 2 medevacs, with a 3rd Thor on the way, and I was going to go with 3 Thors, and I thought it would be really funny, but he kind of sniffs this out, finds it, and GG's out, and there it is, guys. That is the build. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. See ya.